You know, when I was first deciding between my Black Bay 41 that I have at the moment and the Black Bay 58, I found it really difficult. They are very similar watches, and size aside, they're almost identical. But I'm here to help you figure out which one you need. You know, when I was buying my second Black Bay, I was deciding between the Black Bay 41, the black dial, and the Black Bay 58. And I really struggled. There were so many little details, little tiny differences, and I'm here to help you make that decision. Welcome back to yet another versus video at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison as always, and today we have the Black Bay 58 and the Black Bay 41. Now, when I was making my decision over what to buy between a Black Bay 41 and a Black Bay 58, I struggled, guys. I honestly did struggle because they are such similar watches. And I'm here to guide you, to help you as much as possible in what helped me make my decision between the two. So let's begin. Let's begin with the obvious then. I think this is the first thing that people look at when they are going for a watch. Let's look at the case diameter. So on the Black Bay 58, it comes in at 39 millimeters, whereas the Black Bay 41 obviously comes in at 41 millimeters. Now, guys, I'm not going to lie to you here, I am biased. I did buy a Black Bay 41, but this is purely because of my wrist size. I preferred that bigger, bulky watch, and also when I bought the Black Bay, I bought the ATA version, which was actually slimmer than the current version because this has the in-house movement in it. So it is very much up to yourselves. If you like a slimmer watch, then I would go with the Black Bay 58 because it is slimmer and it is smaller. If you like a thicker, more chunky watch, then I would go with the 41. And on the subject of slimness, I actually do prefer the slender feel of the 58. The Black Bay 58 comes in at 11.8 millimeters in thickness, whereas the Black Bay 41 comes in at 14.8, and this is a very considerable difference. This is a very large difference. Personally, I prefer watches that sit closer to the wrist, meaning I do actually prefer the Black Bay 58 in this situation, but I prefer the sizing, the more bulky nature of the Black Bay 41. I prefer the fact that it has a case diameter of 41 millimeters, so there's a give and take here. I think that if the Black Bay 41 had the slenderness that the Black Bay 58 had, it would be my perfect watch, but I can't have everything. With that said, my wrists come in at 6.5 inches, so it does help that I have the ETA version of the Black Bay 41 because it's that little bit slimmer. Unfortunately, you can't pick those up anymore, and the in-house movement is that little bit thicker, so please bear this in mind when you're picking up your next Black Bay because this is a thick, sturdy watch, but it's a sports watch and it's meant to be that big. Now, both of these models, of course, come in stainless steel. We are comparing the black with the black, so they both come in stainless steel. But where you see a big difference, where you see a notable difference, and where you should consider when you're purchasing these is the weight. So the weight of the Black Bay 41 comes in at 185 grams, according to our digital scales that we have here. Now, this is where it gets quite interesting. The Black Bay 58 comes in at 146 grams. Now, both of these watches have the bracelet, so that's a big weight difference. And I suppose it comes down to your personal preference here. Do you want something big, something bulky on your wrist, or would you rather something slimmer, something that you might forget about during the day and be pleasantly surprised when you see it on? On the subject of the weight of this model, I have another point to make on that note, I suppose. Both of these come with a bracelet. Now, the bracelets are pretty much identical, but the Black Bay 41 is slightly bigger, being a bigger watch. So there's not really a comparison there. But what I would compare is what I would switch the bracelet to. Now, personally, I would go with a NATO strap, but I couldn't put the NATO strap on the 41. The reason I couldn't put the NATO strap on the 41 is because NATO straps by their nature have to go under the head of the watch, which pushes the head further off the wrist. This is just too thick to do that. Whereas with the Black Bay 58, you can put a NATO strap on because of how thin the watch is. If you want a NATO strap, I would go with the 58. Now that is a pretty mega difference because a NATO strap means a lot to me. It can totally change the aesthetic of a watch. It can make me either love a watch or really not like a watch. So that's a huge one, and I would definitely bear that in mind. The other thing that I would bear in mind is that if you were to subscribe to this channel, Drew and I here in the studio would really, really appreciate it. It's only one click away. It means we can do more comparison videos. You can request anything you want. Please hit that subscribe button. Moving quickly on to the crown of these models, the 41 has a shorter, stubbier crown than the 58. The 58 has a longer, more elegant crown, but both are in proportion to the bodies of the watches. One thing I have to say though here is that there's a major difference. The Black Bay 58, between where the crown stops and it touches the case, has steel. Now I will show you this on the camera just so you can see it. Whereas the Black Bay 41 has a black inlay. Now the black inlay is absolutely awesome between the crown and the case. It adds such a stealthy, dark dynamic to this watch, and this can actually be seen through the whole Black Bay range. For example, I have the burgundy at home. There is a burgundy sort of strip between the crown and the case. I really like this detail. It's something that you don't see in many watch brands, so if you like that, the Black Bay 41 is worth putting money. The next extremely subtle difference between these two is something that not many people will notice. If you look on the crown of this model, you will see a black Tudor rose in relief just here that's almost engraved into the metal. Whereas, when you look at the Black Bay 58, not the Black Bay 41, you will see that the rose is actually raised against the crown so that you can feel it with your finger just here. And it actually feels quite smooth, it feels quite nice, it feels high quality, it feels like Tudor. The thing is, now, and I'm not going to make this decision for you, but do you prefer this design, which we'll show you on the camera, or the design of the 58? That is the decision that you have to make. And I don't want to make that decision for you, but it is just personal preference. The next difference to note is a pretty big player in the game, and it's a pretty big player in why I made my decision. And it's especially noticeable when you get images of this watch up online. Now, if you head to the Chisholm Hunter website where we're authorized retailers for Tudor watches and get one image side by side of the 58 and the 41, you'll be able to see this really, really clearly. The 41 has white, silvery, I'd say more silvery numerals on the black bezel, whereas on the black bezel on the 58, it has vintage gold looking numerals. This is totally up to you. This is personal preference, but in my opinion, the white is easier to read and more modern than the vintage looking aesthetic of the 58. Not saying that the 58 is bad in any way, it's just my personal preference in style. I'm more modern contemporary. So if you want a vintage looking watch, it's the 58. If you want a more modern looking watch, it's the 41. Next up, I'm taking my watch nerdery to a whole new level because this is a tiny detail. The little rock of Lume in the bezel. At the top of the bezel, both of them have a rock of Lume in the arrow, the red arrow. The splash of red on the Black Bay 58 is larger because the Lume dot is smaller than the Black Bay 41. And also, the Lume dot is that more goldy yellow color, whereas the Black Bay 41 is that white color. Again, this is personal preference. I think I like the fact that you can see more red in the Black Bay 58 than you can in the 41 because that's a really big statement to a watch, and I love that like splash of color. So in this one, I think I'd go for the 58, but again, this is personal preference, guys. And finally, we are going a stage further in the watch snobbery, the watch nerdery, and we're talking about the depth of the face. Now, the reason that the depth of the face in the 41 is bigger than the depth of the face in the 58 is simply because it is a bigger watch. Now, if you prefer shallow faces, faces that sit a little bit closer to that sapphire crystal glass, then the 58's for you. But if you don't, if you prefer a bit more depth between the glass and the face, then the 41 is for you. Both are very, very similar watches. Both are very, very good looking watches, but that is the subtle differences. And that is us done with the major differences between these two watches. Now guys, I do not want to have an influence over your decision. I do not want to impact your decision in any way, as it is a very personal decision over two extremely valuable watches. I would rather be like a guide and point you in the right direction. So I really hope this video helped. If it did, please subscribe and we'll see you next time.